because they do different shots, don't they? And one up there, looking back, and then I guess
Just get comfortable with this.
yes.
Yep. Well, good morning and welcome everyone, including those watching the live stream. I'm Jane Clark and I'm privileged to lead this service of remembrance honouring John Sparks, a time in which to pay tribute to and celebrate John's life as you gather to give thanks for John being a part of your lives. We know, of course, that we are also here to recognise loss and say a farewell, and we will come to that in time. Meanwhile, you gather with grateful hearts, for the privilege that it has been to know and love John, and as I say, grieving hearts. But of course, he embodied the important values of life. Love and loyalty to family and friends and colleagues, honourable qualities, I've witnessed them myself, and who made a very positive contribution to our world. So a life totally worthy of admiration, our admiration and celebration today. We think of you, family, Alan watching, Brian and Catherine, your families and the wider family. We hope that you are comforted by being together. It wasn't possible entirely last time we met together. Comforted by being together and by your memories through that, all that is shared through today. So yes, a welcome to those watching the live stream, especially Alan, Angela, Dylan and Tom watching from Berlin. Brother Richard and family, other relatives in the UK. Cousin Brendan and family, and anyone watching from wherever you are. We hope you feel a sense of connection with us here today, though you are far away. And of course, we bring the memory of Velda to our space. Her remains are with John as later today, family take John to his final resting place. Before we begin a time of memories, I just have a couple of announcements for you. They are invitations. Within the service, anyone is welcome to share a memory, a special memory, or pay tribute. I think we will have time. And then following the service, you're invited to join family for refreshments, and they're served in the building just across the way here when you go outside. And of course, you're all warmly welcome to remain. So what do we want to do today to honour John as we gather? Well, we want to review life, John's story, his joys and interests. We want to reminisce on good times and all of the good that you have seen in John. We want to recognise John's influence in your life, the part that he played in each individual here. And we will respect John's contribution and his character, a man who's touched lives in his own very unique way. And as I've touched on already, we will eventually come to release John. And when we do that, we will contemplate all the ways that John remains with you. In a different way, of course, but he remains a member of your circle, of your family. So we are going to remember John to you, beyond his physical loss. Let's make more of a start now. 2 readings have been chosen for us today, and let's have the first before we overview John's life. And reading for us, daughter Catherine.
His journey's just begun. Don't think of him as gone away. His journey's just begun. Sorry. Okay. Life holds so many facets. This earth is only one. Just think of him as resting from the sorrows and the tears in a place of warmth and comfort where there are no days and years. Made this look easy. Think how he must be wishing that we could know today how nothing but our sadness can really pass away. And think of him as living in the hearts of those he touched. For nothing loved is ever lost, and he was loved so much. Love you, Dad.
Yeah. Beautiful. It is hard. Those readings have such power and in such concise words, but they really touch us. So certainly understandable. Well, for the details of John's life, we have him to thank. Something John put a lot of time into since Valda's passing was writing his own memoirs. Brilliantly done, I have to say. And I've had to condense it a little bit for today. If you wanted to read the whole thing, you can speak to family. And I'm reading a tribute from Catherine later on, who wrote about John's memory, incredible memory, and I wholeheartedly agree. It's an incredible read. But isn't it wonderful that we are actually using John's own recollections of his life? So John was born in Marylebone, London, to Joseph and Dora, and raised in Acton, West London, with younger brother Richard arriving when John was 12. And he wrote of, and I'm quoting here, mainly terrace housing, almost nobody had a car and no cars parked in the street, an ideal setup for playing in the street, which he did with neighbourhood kids. He goes on to say, horse and cart were almost the only traffic, selling milk, coal, baked goods, green groceries, and iced lollies, and a rag and bone man came for collections of old clothes and bric-a-brac. He wrote of being knocked off his three-wheeler when he was 2, and he said this, some say that's explained a lot. Well, John enjoyed spending his pocket money on sweets and salted peanuts and attending the cinema, and he took piano lessons, which was curtailed due to wartime. He had very fond memories of his childhood, Christmas pantomime, visits to the zoo, visiting the seaside at Barry, South Wales, and a cat that followed them home and became John's pet. John was evacuated to Chudley in Devon, and he helped with farm activities with the family he was there with. On a visit home to Acton, he saw the previous home that they'd lived in before they'd moved up the street. It had been hit, and actually some of his friends who weren't evacuated didn't survive. John wrote letters home to his parents. The topic of the both that I'm going to read you now were of a lot of school marks featured in both of them. So the first one is from December 1939, John's 9. Dear Mother and Father, I'm going to tell you something that will make Dad have a fit. 40 fits. We had a test, and where do you think I was? It just happened that I came top, and that was in big lines underneath it. I came top with Rose Page because we both had 60.5 out of 70. So that was the first one. And John's younger brother Richard was born midway through his time in Chudley. So in December 1942, age 12, he writes, Dear Mum, thank you very much for your letter which I received today. I am very pleased that I have a little brother, and I should like him to be called Richard Alfred if you and Dad like it. I should like to see him. Do you think I can come home at Christmas, as I wouldn't trouble you, and I could help you with the dishes and errands and other jobs? I was first for geography, and now I am only 13 marks behind the leading boy. Two lovely letters, childhood letters. John returned home mid-1943, joined Boys Brigade as a side drummer in a band of buglers and drummers. And actually it was only through skipping school one day that John didn't witness part of the school bombed. John enjoyed Speedway when it resumed after the war, and he passed his general school exam, and though he was offered work at the county council, he did a further year's school. He yearned to work on the railways, and a lot of his time was spent on bridges, watching the rail underneath at the junctions. He yearned to work on the rails, but his father discouraged it, given his grammar school education. But John did a railway study tour, accompanied by his father, through Switzerland and France, and they saw some of the evidence of the devastation of leftovers of war on the towns and countryside. John got a clerical position in the mortgage department of a building society and did his compulsory service with the RAF. 21 months service, it actually kept getting extended and extended and extended. And John's brother Richard has offered a memory of those times. My abiding memory of John is a childhood one. We were still living in Allison Road, so it was 1948 or early 1949. John was home on leave from the RAF. Older children who lived at the other end of the road were taunting me. I said I would bring my big brother who was in the RAF. And they said I didn't have a big brother and he couldn't be in the RAF. I went home and got John, and he came up the road with me in his uniform, and they fled. Our mother adored our John, and of course he wrote to our parents every week, which was so important to her particularly. She would speak with great pride about him and how everyone liked him. And I think that is a good way to remember him tonight, where you are, and today for us. John returned to his original position in mortgages, then to London County Council, and for leisure learned to dance with the Boys Brigade boys and attended the dances. And after riding pillion on a motorbike to a holiday camp in North Wales, John promptly returned and bought his friend's bike, and so began a love of motorbikes and travel. Les, a friend, suggested a motorbike tour through Europe in the summer of 1958, which they did, joined by an Aussie bloke who worked with Les. By the way, John had an amazing recollection of their travels. Again, I haven't added it here, but it's just wonderful. Lots of adventures, and time doesn't permit I go into those. But the Aussie bloke was Velda's brother Alan, and on their return from travelling, they dropped him off and met Velda. She was holidaying through England with her mother. Velda's brother Alan did a further trip with John, a Greyhound bus tour taking in some of America and Canada, and they were able to stay with some of John's relatives in Canada. So when it was next it was to Sydney, Alan was eager to return the favour and extend hospitality to John with his family. But in Sydney, Alan was occupied with a return to his studies, and so it was Velda that became the tour guide and companion to John, which led to marriage on the 14th of October of 1961. John himself was actually the official wedding photographer, so you'll see later John is noticeably absent from many of the wedding photos. And they honeymooned at the Batch in Bundeena. It was likely they were going to settle in Australia permanently, so John suggested they visit New Zealand to have a look around before they did. And New Zealand became home from then after. They both secured work, John in the post office, but gave the longest amount of service to the city council. He became a senior rates clerk, then computer analyst programmer, then supervisor. And they set up home in Papakura and raised 3 children, Alan, Brian and Catherine, and they each continued to pursue their hobbies, photography for John, dressmaking for Velda. All in all, John gave 29 years service to the council, and he said, and I'm quoting him here, a happy environment for a good employer. Though John did long hours at work, each were devoted parents. They coached and managed soccer teams in the weekends, taught and contributed about 10 years to Learn to Swim Club through the years of their children's schooling. Velda also served as secretary to the soccer club, and John was president. In 1976, the whole family went to England to see the Sparks relatives and visited John's evacuation parents in Chudley. And many Christmases were spent with Velda's family and visiting Bundeena Batch. And in New Zealand, they had wonderful times at Maraetai Beach. And in the early 90s, following their retirement, Velda and John were further freed to travel, and they did extensively every year. And John told me at the time of Velda's passing, when we met, of many adventures. China was a favourite, Singapore, Hong Kong, South America, North America, twice for John, to name a few. To Australia often, including a camp coach tour in Australia and one in Europe, and explored locally around New Zealand. It was after a trip to Britain in 1993, they both became involved, well, John became involved first in researching family history of the Sparks and Brent families, which led to Velda's keen interest in genealogy, both sides of her family. And they were involved in groups as well, Family History Society in Papakura, Senior Net, Grey Power, Tai Chi and Mahjong, as well as proud grandparents of 4, Taylor and Madison, New Zealand, and Dylan and Tom in Berlin. And you know, Velda was diagnosed with dementia over the last 10 years of her life, very challenging for family, for John. Dedicated and loving care was provided by John until it was eventually necessary for the more advanced care provided at Bupa Wattle Downs, with John lovingly visiting every day. And sadly, Velda passing for John and family, and just shy of their 59th wedding anniversary. And as I said, Velda's remains are with John for his burial later today. So thank you, John, for all of your memories and all of your help. An amazing life, a long life, blessing of family, love and laughter, contribution, experiences, vast experiences, and able to live independently with some help, carers and family, to such a late age. An honourable life, well lived. So I'm reading now 2 tributes on behalf of John's children, Brian and Catherine, and then I'm going to open the floor to others if you had a particular little memory to add. This is Brian's. My memories of Dad. I suppose we were always going to play football. From 5 years old, the encouragement to play from Dad was there. Dad's passion for the game and sport in general throughout his life was obvious, from coaching, managing, to becoming a life member of the Papakura City Football Club. As we all eventually stopped playing, Dad's commitment to the armchair was impressive. If there was some sport to watch, he was there. I think his Sky television box was his best and most used purchase. Growing up in my teens wasn't always plain sailing with Dad. I had a few occasions of, shall we say, disagreements. I'll never forget the day Dad arrived home to find myself and my brand new girlfriend home alone. He was not impressed, and he proceeded to tell me so. Let's just say Dad didn't pull any punches, and if I had any hopes of impressing my girlfriend, they were dashed right then and there. But in a twist of fate, I might say good fortune, I ended up marrying that girl. So thanks for that, Dad. Sport wasn't his only passion. Travelling had to be right up there too. I guess the 3 of us were lucky as children. We got to travel overseas many times when we were younger, and at the time that wasn't so common. Then, as if free vacations weren't enough, they retired from taking us along and started planning their own adventures. Our home quickly became a mini museum of photos and souvenirs, which now means I've inherited the delightful task of sorting through an entire archive of photos. And remember, John was a photographer, and knickknacks from around the globe. Thanks for that little legacy, Dad. I know what I'm going to be doing for the next while. Oh, and let's not forget their genealogical escapades. Mum and Dad turned into amateur detectives uncovering family history. In Dad's later years, he took on the role of caregiver with dedication that was nothing short of heroic. He cared for Mum, who developed dementia, with such devotion that it was as if he'd signed up for a lifetime of 24/7 service. And even after Mum passed, Dad kept her memory alive with her funeral service sheet permanently parked on his kitchen bench. I guess that was his way of keeping her close. I think after Mum passed, Dad was at a loss. I don't think he ever really recovered from losing Mum. Now Dad's reunited with Mum, and I'd like to think that they're up there, planning their next big adventure. Rest in peace, Dad. We'll miss you, but we're glad you're back with Mum. And Remembering Dad by Catherine. I only recently read Dad's life story, written by him and put together beautifully by my sister-in-law Tanya. Today's service will draw heavily from that. But what wasn't noted in that life story was Dad's dry British sense of humour. He loved the classic British comedies of the 60s and 70s, Benny Hill, Morecambe and Wise, and the Two Ronnies and the Goodies. We watched countless hours of their TV shows when I was young. I'll always remember Dad's raucous laughter when he watched these comedians. It was wholesome, intelligent humour. Well, maybe not Benny Hill, which appealed to Dad and sometimes had him in tears of laughter. I'm sure it gave him a continuing connection to England also. Dad was truly happiest when travelling or planning the next adventure. Through his life story, it was clear he had an adventuring spirit from an early age. It was that love of travel that we all benefited from. I don't know many kids my age who got to travel around the world with their family. I was only 6 years old when Dad and Mum took us all together to Los Angeles, England and Hong Kong over several weeks in 1976. We were taken out of school during the teaching term, but homework came with us, so I guess that was part of the negotiation with our schools. It was the only time we met Dad's parents, our English grandparents, at their house in Acton. I don't have much of a memory of them as such, other than finding a pair of teeth in the bathroom one night that scared the hell out of me. I think I found out later they were Grandma's. It was the travel bug that meant Dad and Mum would visit me a few times in England over the years I was living there in the 1990s. They were in their retirement years and Dad and Mum had delved into their family genealogy. What a perfect hobby for someone who loved travel and history as Dad did. I loved having them visit. It meant I saw more of the places I was living in, and particularly in England. Dad was a knowledgeable resource on so many places. We'd hire a car for the UK countryside visits with a list of places and often relative cemetery and grave locations to find. They continued to visit me overseas when I moved back closer to home, to Melbourne, in 2004. One year visiting me twice, not many months apart. I think Mum enjoyed a reason to visit Australia more, and I certainly enjoyed reconnecting with them closer to home. Growing up, Dad also hooked us into his love of football. He was a Londoner after all, and an avid Arsenal fan. I have a very clear memory of getting up at around 3 a.m. annually to watch the English FA Cup final live from London. It was a great family tradition. All three of us kids played soccer, as we call it here, starting out at our local club in Papakura. Dad coached some of our teams over the years. In my first league years in the early 80s, I was the solo girl in the Papakura under-12 team. Dad was the coach and Mum was the team manager. I remember Dad and Mum continued to come to all of my matches as I progressed to senior teams, both locally and once I'd moved out of home and living in Three Kings and later Mount Eden. I think it would be fair to say when I moved to London and had settled in there, I had a short stint playing for Arsenal. I think Dad was pretty proud. Dad and Mum were very supportive parents through our childhood, and when we needed to learn to swim, they both helped at the local Learn to Swim club, where we went for swimming lessons. They did the same at the local soccer club. taking on voluntary board roles and helping out there as much as they could. At one point, Dad was both the president and treasurer of Papakura City Soccer Club. That commitment to our family was part of who they were. The commitment they had to each other was also very evident. They had fairly traditional roles in our family due to the era they both grew up. Dad worked and Mum ran the household and the children. If we got in trouble, Dad dealt with us. I think that's where I learnt to run so fast for soccer, tearing up the hallway to my bedroom when I got in trouble. But at each life stage, they continued to find things that interested them and that they could do together. When we had all left home, they travelled extensively and got stuck into family history research, each tracking down both sets of the parents on each side of their family tree. Dad told me on more than one occasion that all his research needs to be passed on. Noted, Dad, it will be done. Dad was forever committed to Mum, no more evident than when Alzheimer's took hold of her over her. Dad looked after Mum at our family home for as long as was possible, and I'd estimate that would be close to 10 years that he was her primary carer. Once she was in a care home, he visited her every day, and I know he missed her terribly when she passed and lost his purpose somewhat. It's worth noting that Dad had the sharpest memory even at 94. He could remember so much from his childhood. He had a love of history, and he'd talk for hours about politics if you let him. He was always interested in knowing more, and he retained so much of whatever he watched or read about. Excuse me. Quite often, our regular phone calls were a great opportunity for Dad to share all of these things. I would usually just let him talk away and only briefly update him on my world, and I certainly didn't have anywhere near as much to talk about. It's amazing to think Dad continued to live on in our family home for another 4 years after Mum passed. There were times when he talked to me about moving to a retirement home, perhaps later on, but the whole concept was daunting to him. I think it all worked out as he wanted. He is finally at peace, and he stayed living at home almost to the end. Dad told us he was ready to go many times in the last couple of weeks of his life. And while it's very sad that he's no longer with us, he had lived a long, relatively healthy and fulfilling life. Dad will be reunited with Mum again when they are buried together, and spiritually, I'm sure Dad is planning their next trip in the ever after. All right, we've got a little bit of time. Is there anyone that had something that they could add? Perhaps there's something that we haven't touched on today, or John hasn't touched on. Any memories at all that come to mind, or just want to come and say what John meant to you? Is there anyone at all? Yeah. Well, we have shared a lot. We've covered a lot of life. And I know that later when you go through for refreshments, many memories or your personal little memories will flow. And you can share that with each other. And of course, beyond that too, when memories come to you in the days and weeks and months to come, share them with each other. Hey, a little memory came to mind today. Do you remember this? Share it with each other in texts and phone calls and emails. Just keep John alive in your memories. Well, let's take a look now at some of what's been spoken about today in the photos that family have collated. Some of the best times in John and family's life. Remember, he was often the photographer. But let's see his face and smile again. And I just want to tell you about all of the music that you're hearing today. Well, it was played at Velda's service. It's repeated as a bit of a connection back to Velda, but also because John gave such particular attention to choosing the most perfect pieces for Velda's day. And they are really special songs to him too. Let's watch and listen. Well, both of the readings that are being read today are on your service sheets. You can reflect on them further at home. But Tanya's reading the second reading for us, and this is Last Journey. Great one. Okay. There is a train at the station with a seat reserved just for me. I'm excited about its destination, as I've heard it sets you free. The trials and tribulations, the pain and the stress we breathe don't exist where I am going, only happiness, I believe.
I hope that you will be there to wish me on my way. It's not a journey you can join in. It's not your time today. There'll be many destinations. Some are happy, some are sad. Each one a brief reminder of the great times that we had. Many friends I know are waiting who took an earlier train to greet and reassure me that nothing has changed. We'll take the time together to catch up on the past, to build a new beginning, one that will always last. One day you'll take your journey on the train just like me, and I promise that I'll be there at the station. You will see that life is just a journey enriched by those you meet. No one can take that from you. It's always yours to keep. But now, as no seat is vacant, you will have to muddle through. Make sure you fulfill your ambitions, as you know I'll be watching you.
Well, this service can only be a small representation of a very full and interesting life and fulfilling life and fulfilled life. But we have done what we've set out to do. We've overviewed life, we have honoured life, and we have celebrated John's long and exemplary life. And your being here today expresses your admiration and your gratitude for the privilege it's been to walk alongside John for the time that you did. A man special to you in ways individual and unique to each one of you. As the reading said, at the station, and you will see that life is just a journey enriched by those you meet. That is the case for you, and it will have been the case for John, having you in his life. Well, I'll soon be asking you to stand for our most final words of farewell, and then as some more music plays, John will lead us out from here, and you'll have the opportunity for a personal farewell outside, in memory and in thanks for all that John has meant to you. We remember John for all the ways he laboured, saw the photos of him at work, and contributed, for the things he loved and cared about, and the legacy of family, children, grandchildren. You might remember John in the interests that you shared with him, and all the places and spaces that were a big part of his life. And for those that knew him the best, the memory of John's love and friendship, you can still feel it in your hearts. Yes, the earthly physical connection has ended, but all the ways that John has enriched your lives remains with you. We think of John reunited with Velda in the life beyond this. And when the time comes to join them, I know John and Velda would be people that you would look forward to seeing again one day. So keep John forever in your memory, in your thoughts, keep him in your conversations, most especially keep him in your hearts. And that way he will remain with you as you go about life. So can I ask you all to stand, please? So family and friends, it's time to go from here, for now and for later, as John travels to his final resting place. May we show love and support to each other. May memory bless us and protect us and comfort us. And may the power of love fill us with strength and peace. Amen.